Up in smoke, successful American cannabis campaigns fuel the 420 rally supporting the legalization of pot. Bostonians try to return to normal life as officials wait to interrogate the suspect captured in connection with Monday's attack. And a dream come true for fantasy fans. The stars of Fan Expo attract a colorful crowd at Vancouver's Convention Centre.
Live from Global BC, the News Hour. Here's Andrew.
Good evening. Less than a week into the provincial election campaign, the Liberals are calling for a high-profile NDP.
Fear gives way to celebration on the streets of Boston. The manhunt for the marathon bombing suspect is finally over. Plus, it's one of the biggest Vaisakhi parades outside of India, and today it hits the streets of Surrey.
Now, BC One, BC's News 24/7.
Good morning, happy Saturday. My name is Scott McLean. People living in the Boston area are relieved, as you might imagine, after
a Peachland couple tried to outsmart the smart meter installation on their home, but ended up in the dark when BC Hydro found out. Will they get their power back? Two Vernon residents return from Boston, the blasts nearby, fresh in their memories. How has the terrifying ordeal affected their lives? It's a popular and vital service, meals for shut-ins and seniors. But what's going to happen after the chef retires from the kitchen?
This is Global Okanagan News at 5 with Rick Weber.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Doris Maria Bregalisi.
On the News Hour.
Peace is restored in Boston.
We feel elated. We're thrilled.
Now that the bombing suspect is in custody, the city attempts to get back to normal following a tense and tragic week.
Today it's not about how far you can run, about how fast you can run. It's about showing your spirit.
And Calgarians come out in the hundreds to show their support for the victims of the marathon bombings.
Now from Global Calgary, the News Hour with Jamie Dahl.
Good evening. Boston is bustling once again tonight, in stark contrast to yesterday when the American city was rendered a virtual ghost town.
Tonight on the News Hour.
The lockdown is lifted in Boston, but not before a night of terror and violence. We hear from Edmontonians who were trapped in Boston for most of the day because of a massive manhunt. The province says it's made the necessary changes to prevent the misuse of taxpayers' money, but the opposition says it's not enough. Plus, the side effects of eliminating rewards programs with prescription drugs.
I use them for groceries, birthday presents, my daughter.
Why some say it will hurt those who need it most.
Now, from Global Edmonton, the News Hour with Gord Stanke and Carol Ann Devaney.
Good evening. Gord is off tonight. We begin with breaking news.
On the News Hour.
Details in the Boston bombings continue to surface as Southern Albertans still wait for their loved ones to return home. Running groups across Canada are joining together to show support for those affected by the bombing tragedy. And Taber police are asking for the public's help in identifying a man they believe is involved in taking hundreds of photos in a public washroom.
Now from Global Lethbridge, the News Hour with Cheryl Oates and Tom Rolston.
Good evening. We begin again tonight in Boston, where the search for answers continues.
The mayor's prayer breakfast by another name. The economic impact of the Junos. And the Winnipeg Jets playoff push means some resistance this afternoon against the New York Islanders.
Live from the Global Saskatoon studios, the evening news with Shalima Maharaj.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. The Saskatoon breakfast drew more than 1,500 guests.
Manhunt in Massachusetts. Multiple shots are fired in a neighborhood near Boston as police track the most wanted man in America. Also here at home, police are investigating a crime scene on Atkinson Street following a homicide. And a family shares their fears after learning the future of their child's health care may not be happening in Regina.
You're watching the Evening News with Jill Morgan.
Good evening and thanks for watching. The events
since the events of last night have caused, major pain.
On the hunt for a suspect, how Winnipeggers are watching the Boston drama unfold.
Is he aware of how angry Manitobans are becoming because of his broken promises?
A tax hike has critics looking at legal action.
Cape Cadozic mostly clear and cool tonight. Tomorrow will be mostly sunny, but clouds push in from the west and bring a few flurries. I'll show you next.
I had a broken keyboard, I bought a broken keyboard. I bought a ski blanket.
And how a hit song has boosted sales at thrift shops across the province.
From the Global Winnipeg Studios, the Evening News with Peter Chura.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Well,
A grisly discovery in the Don Valley. A symbol of Canada is being slaughtered.
There were 4 more bodies yesterday, so this guy's really active, and I'm afraid there's a lot of young beavers. He's going to clean out the entire family unit.
Are police dealing with a rogue hunter or something much worse? Also ahead, forensic finds.
And when you die, the world should celebrate who you were, and instead he's lying in the morgue unidentified, and that doesn't sit right with me.
How this artwork could help solve cold cases.
From the Global Newsroom in Toronto, NewsHour with Leslie Roberts and Ann Ruskowski.
Thanks for joining us. We begin with breaking news right now as the FBI
Manhunt in Boston. In an unprecedented move, an entire city is shut down as police search for a 19-year-old bombing suspect. That story and the rest of the day's news right now on Global Montreal.
Tonight on the Evening News.
Long-awaited justice. The murder trial of a Montreal man accused in a horrific domestic murder gets underway at the Montreal courthouse. Can't take it anymore.
Du harcèlement, il y en a dans tous les milieux de travail.
Montreal's fire chief, set to retire later this spring, steps down sooner than expected. And it's not just for cars anymore.
We've been waiting for that for many years. Now, that's the day.
The new Champlain Bridge project will also include light rail.
Now, from the Global Montreal Studios at the corner of Peel and St. Catherine in downtown Montreal, the Evening News with Jamie Orchard.
Hi there, thanks for joining us tonight. Well, it's been a violent, bloody, and confusing 24 hours in the...
Tonight on the New Brunswick Evening News.
A city in chaos. A deadly and dramatic day in Boston. Health cuts.
I don't think healthcare is the place to cut the budget.
Reaction to the province's plan to trim hospital jobs. And answering the call.
I think different calls touch people in different ways.
A day in the life of a 911 dispatcher.
Now, from the Global News Center, the New Brunswick Evening News with Ron Kronstein.
Good evening. It has been a violent, bloody, and confusing...
Tonight on the Halifax Evening News.
A city in chaos. A deadly and dramatic day in Boston. Fulfilling a promise.
This is wrong. And as a government, I made a promise to her.
The quest in Rehtaeh Parsons' name to change the criminal code. And doctor fatigue.
I look around and I think a lot of doctors are burned out and are overworked.
Are Nova Scotia's doctors overworked?
Now, from the Global News Center, the Halifax Evening News with Ron Kronstein.
Good evening. It has been a violent, bloody, and confused 24 hours in the Boston.
Tonight on the Evening News.
The manhunt ends. Still unanswered questions in the Boston bombing after the second suspect is finally captured. High-tech ship.
We're looking at anti-surface missiles.
A visiting French warship offers inspiration for Canada. Plus, world record attempt.
There's something like a cup of crude oil in every single disposable diaper that you throw away.
Why these parents in St. John are racing to get their babies diapered.
Now, from the Global News Center, the Evening News with Rebecca Lau.
Good evening. It was a traumatic week in the city of Boston, but last